Today we are going to discuss about development. What is development? Development is the term referred to an act of getting better by expanding, enlarging or refining. Development is a progress with structural change. This term may also be used to refer to the progress process in which something exceeds by degree to a different stage. So deterioration of a condition is not a development. Development should be a positive. It should lead to a better condition. Development is the act of improving quality of life and making sure everyone has the preference in what they look for. What are the different features of the development? Like there should be availability of electricity, good road, security of life and property, disciplined citizen, quality education, existence of employment opportunities, and good governance. Reason why less developed countries are underdeveloped, because there is a lack of industrialization due to poverty and lack of capital, widespread illiteracy, lack of research for progress, lack of technology and transfer of the know-how from the developed countries to the developing country, debt burden. There are different type of development. Economic development, like increasing the enhancing the living standard of the masses by which through the mean of improving gross domestic product. Social, life of the people and the infrastructure in the country. Political, the level and the type of the governance being practiced in the country. Democracy is thought to be a better type of the governance, and if a country has a democracy then it will be politically more developed. Environment, this has to do with the nature of the appearance of the environment. So if a country has a more protected forest land, natural features, mountains, rivers and others, then it will be called more developed. Pattern of the development in the world. The world is divided into two groups. The more economically developed countries, which includes the richer, more industrialized countries of the world, mostly referred to as a North. Most of the European countries, North American countries, and some of the Asian countries are thought to be more economically developed. The less economically developed countries are poorer, less industrialized countries, and most of them are located in the southern hemisphere of the world. That's why they are called also South. You will find less developed countries in South of America, African Peninsula, Africa, Asia, and some island countries. The map shows the location of the less developed countries and more developed countries. You will find that southern hemisphere is less developed while countries in the northern hemisphere are more developed. Countries exhibit different level of development. The factors which affect development may be economic, social, cultural, technical, and political. Measuring development. Studying development is about measuring how development developed one country is compared to other countries or to the same country in the past. Development measures how economically, socially, culturally, or technologically advanced a country has become. The two more important ways of measuring development are economic development and human development. Economic development is a measure of a country's wealth and how it is generated. For example, agriculture is considered less economically advanced than banking, insurance, finance, and other sectors. Human development measured the access the population has to wealth, job, education, nutrition, health, leisure, safety, as well as political and cultural freedom. Material elements such as wealth and nutrition are described as a standard of living. Health and leisure are often referred to as quality of life. What are development indicators? Development indicators are the things through which we can assess the development level of the development. Development indicators are used to examine whether a country is developed or not. Geographers use a series of the development indicator to compare the development of one country to another. There is not a single way to calculate the level of development of a country. Health. Does the population have access to medical care? Health is one of the criteria for assessing the level of the development of a country. Industry. What type of industry dominates? Less development countries focus on primary industries such as farming, fishery, mining, and more developed countries you will find that there is more of secondary and tertiary industries. The most advanced countries tend to focus more on tertiary and service industries such as banking and information technology. Education. Do the population have access to education? Is it free? What level of education is available? That is primary, secondary, higher education. So if a country is providing more higher studies, research-based study, then it will be called more developed countries. Economic development indicators. To assess the economic development of a country, geographers use different indicators, including gross domestic product (GDP). GDP is the total value of the goods and service produced by a country or consumed by a country in a year. Gross national product (GNP) is measures the total economic output of a country, indicating earnings from foreign investment. GNP per capita is a country's GNP divided by its population. Economic growth measures the annual increase in GDP, GNP, GDP per capita, GNP per capita. Inequality of wealth is the gap in the income between a country's richest and poorest people. It can be measured in many ways. The proportion of a country's wealth owned by richest 10% of the population compared with the proportion owned by the remaining 90% of the wealth. Inflation measures how much the price of the goods, services, and wage increase each year. High inflation can be a bad thing and suggest a government lack control over the economy. Unemployment is the number of the people who cannot find work, those who are qualified to have work. Economic structure shows the division of a country's economy between primary, secondary, and tertiary industries. Demographics study population's growth and structure. It compares with birth rate to death rate, life expectancy, urban-rural ratios. Many least developed countries have a younger, fast-growing population, and in most of the more developed countries, you will find there will be more number of the older person. The birth rate in United Kingdom is 11 per 1000, whereas in other countries like Kenya, India, there will be more. Like in the, for example, Kenya, it will be 14. Human development indicators. Earlier we had talked about there is two economic development indicators. One is economic development indicator and another is human development indicators. So for human Development indicators, life expectancy, the average age to which a person lives. For example, this is 79 in UK, 65 in India, 48 in Kenya. Infant mortality rate counts the number of the babies per 1000 live births who die under the age of 1. This is 5 in UK, 61 in Kenya, and around 30 in India. Poverty indices counts the percentage of the people living below the poverty line. For example, $1 per day. In India, it is around 300 per month. Access to basic services. The availability of the services necessary for healthy life, such as clean water and sanitation. Access to healthcare takes into account statistics such as how many doctors are for every patient. Risk of disease calculates the percentage of the people with disease such as AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis, and other. Access to education measures how many people attend primary education, secondary school, and higher education. Literacy rate is the percentage of the adults who can read and write. This is 99% in UK, 85% in Kenya, 60% in India. Access to technology indicates statistics such as percentage of the people who access the phone, mobile phone, television, internet, computer. Male-female equality compare statistics such as the literacy rate and employment rate between different sexes, genders, male and female. Government spending priorities compares health and education expenditure with military expenditure and paying off the debts. Measures of development. Gross domestic product, total value of the goods and services produced or consumed in a year. When a country develops, it becomes higher. Gross national income, the total value of the goods and services of a people of that nationality produced in a country, that is GDP plus money from people living abroad. GNI, it will increase if the country develops. GNI per capita or GDP per capita, it will also increase. Birth rate will decrease, death rate will decrease when the country develops. Infant mortality will decrease, people per doctor will decrease, that is the number of doctors per thousand population will increase, literacy rate will increase, access to safe drinking water will increase, life expectancy will increase, human development index will also increase. There are some limitations in these measures also. The measures can be misleading when used on their own because they are average. They don't show up the elite groups in the population or variation between the country. They shouldn't be used on their own because as a country develops, some aspect develop before others. So it might be seem that a country is more developed than it actually is. Using more than one measure or using the HDI avoids these problems. To balance inequalities, indices tends to be an amalgamation of many different indicators. The United Nations Human Development Index (HDI) is a weighted mix of indices that show the expectancy, knowledge, standard of living. As Vietnam has a higher literacy rate and life expectancy than Pakistan, it has much higher HDI value than it has similar per capita GDP. HDI is measured between 0 and 1. US has an HDI of 0.99, whereas Kenya has 0.47, India has 5.6, something like that. Human Development Index HDI. HDI is a socio-economic measure. It focuses on three variables of the human welfare: life expectancy, which is related to health facilities; adult education literacy, which is related to education; real GDP per capita, which is related to standards of living. Global inequalities. You will see in the map that the location of less developed countries, most of the southern hemisphere is less developed, while countries in the northern hemisphere are more developed. Quality of life isn't the same as a standard of living. As a country develops, the quality of life and standard of living of people, someone's standard of living is their material wealth. Quality of life include standard of living and other things that aren't easy to measure. For example, how safe they are or how nice their environment is. In general, higher the a person's standard of living, the higher their quality of life. But just because they have a high standard of living doesn't mean they have a good quality of life. Different people in different part of the world have different ideas about what an acceptable quality of life is. So a person having leisure, more leisure and enjoyment might call a better life, better standard of life. In some countries, if a person has good job, good good employment opportunity, then he might say that he has a better standard living standards. So it is a relative things. Causes of global inequality. Environmental factor affect how developed country is. A poor climate. If a country has a poor climate, really hot or very cold, they won't be able to grow much. This reduces the amount of the food produced. This can lead to malnutrition in some countries, leading to people having a low quality of life. People also have fewer crops to sell, so less money to spend on goods and services. Government get less money from taxes as less is sold and bought, meaning there is less to spend on the developing the country. Poor farming land. If the land in a country is steep or has poor soil, then they won't produce a lot of food. This has the same effect as having a poor climate. Limited water supply. Some countries won't have a lot of water. This makes it hard for them to produce a lot of food. This is the case in most of the desert lands, Saharan countries. Lots of natural hazards. A natural hazard is an event that has the potential to affect people's living or property, for example, earthquake, tsunami, volcanic eruption, tropical storms, drought, flood, etc. Countries that have a lot of natural disaster have to spend a lot of money rebuilding that disaster occurs. Natural disaster reduce the quality of life for the people affected, and they reduce the amount of the money the government has to spend on the development projects. Few raw materials. Countries without many raw materials or minerals like coal, oil, metal ores tend to have less money because they have fewer products to sell. This means they have less money to spend on development. Some countries do not have a lot of raw materials but still aren't very developed because they don't have the money to develop the infrastructure to exploit them. Factors influencing development. Political. If a country has an unstable government, it might not invest in things like healthcare, education, and improving the economy. This leads to slow development or no development at all. Social. Some government are corrupt. This means that people in the country get richer whilst others stay poor and have low quality of life. Countries with mineral deposits and energy resources were more likely to develop than countries that do not have. If there is war in the country lost money that could be spent on the development. Poor trade link. World trade patterns influence a country's economy and so affects the level of development. If a country has poor trade link, it won't make a lot of money, so there will be less uh, money left for spending on development work. An economy based on primary produce. Countries that mostly export primary produce tend to be less developed. This is because you don't make much profit by selling primary products. Their prices also fluctuates. Sometimes the price falls below the cost of the production. This means people make less money, so the government has less money to spend on development work. Lots of debt. Many poor countries borrow money from other countries and international organizations. This money has to be paid back and sometimes with interest. Any money a country makes is used to pay back the money, so they don't have enough resources to develop their own country. Social factor. Drinking water. If the country has less availability of the drinking water, then there will be a problem, and there will be more healthcare problems like waterborne diseases, typhoid and cholera will be widespread. Being ill reduces a person's quality of life. Ill people cannot work hard, and then the production in the economy will reduce. The place of the women in the society also plays a very important role in the development. Women who have an equal place in the society are more likely to be educated and work, and they can contribute more to the development of the country. Women who are educated and work have a better quality of life, and the country has more money to spend on development work. Child education. The more children that go to a school, the more developed a country will be. That is because they will get a better education, so they will get better jobs. Being educated and having good job improves a person's quality of life and increase the money the country has to spend on the development works. So you will find that there are different causes of the global inequalities: a poor climate, limited water supply, unstable government, wars, lot of debt, lack of drinking water, poor farming land, poor child education, fewer materials, poor trade links, inequality in the society, corrupt government, lots of natural hazards, and economy is primarily based on primary products. Consequences of inequality: high birth rate and infant mortality rates, poor education facilities, more jobs in primary and informal sectors, fewer in secondary and tertiary, a smaller volume of trade, less purchasing power per capita. So here you will find some of the example of the different countries which has, like United Kingdom, it has a better GDP, better health indicator. Russia, it has a very good GDP, very good HDI and life expectancy. Bangladesh, you will find that their GDP is very low, life expectancy is also low, birth rate is high, HDI is average. Italy, you will find that GDP is very high, life expectancy is very high, HDI is very high. Kenya, you will find that HDI is average or low, life expectancy is low, GDP volume is very low. Brazil, it has a high GDP, but HDI is also good, and volume of the life expectancy is very good. China, it has a very large GDP, life expectancy is also good, HDI is also better. Ethiopia, you will find that HDI is very low, GDP volume is very low, life expectancy very low. United States of America, you will find that volume of GDP is very high, life expectancy is very high, HDI is also very high. So we have found that different countries at different level of the development. Fair trade trading. Fair trade is all about getting a fair price for good produced in poorer countries. Companies who want to sell products labeled as trade have to pay produce as a fair price. Buyers also pay extra on the top of their fair trade price to help develop the area the good come from. Only producers that treat their employees well can take part in the scheme. Producer in a fair trade scheme often produce a lot of because of the price. This can lead them to produce too much. An excess will make world price fall and cause producer who aren't in the fair trade scheme to lose out. Trading. These are the group of countries who make agreement to reduce barriers to trade. When a poor country joins a trading group, the amount of the money the country gets from the trading increase. More money means more development. However, it's not easy for poor countries that aren't part of the trading group to export goods to countries that are part of the trading groups. This reduces the export income of the non-trading group countries and slow down their development. Aid. Aid is given by one country in the form of money or resource. The country that gives the aid is called the donor and that receive is called recipient. There are two main sources of the aid from the donor countries: government paid by the taxes and non-government organization NGOs paid by the voluntary donation. Bilateral aid can be tied. This means it's given with one condition, that the recipient country has to buy the goods and services. This helps the country of the donor country. However, if the goods and services are expensive in the donor country, the aid doesn't go as far as it would. Aid can be classed as either short term or long term. There are two different ways the donor government can give aid to recipient country: directly to recipient, indirectly through international organization.